This video is all about planting in the Back to Eden garden. The purple sprouting broccoli was starting to bolt, so I threw them to the chickens. They love brassicas. This includes broccoli, cabbage, kale, things like that. As soon as I pulled the broccoli plants, I was ready to plant something else. I decided to plant beans in this bed. So first I cleared the area and raked it smooth. Next I raked back the composted wood chips. Dropped the beans into the soil. And then rake the wood chips back over. This is how I plant large seeds that are spaced pretty closely, like beans and peas, things like that. This section was actually our first Back to Eden garden 4 years ago. You can see as I pull my rake through it, the ground's similar to Paul's. Instead of adding more wood chips this past fall, I just added chicken compost to the area, like he does in his garden. It's beautiful compost, that's for sure, and it's easy to plant in, rather than planting in deep wood chips. However, there are some drawbacks. Weeds come up more easily, and it dries out more quickly than areas that are covered more deeply with wood chips. Paul will tell you the same. So I've decided to continue to layer the wood chips in our garden for as long as we have them. So if you notice when I was planting the beans, it was basically just dirt, just the compost. After about a season or so, the mulch breaks down. And so what I did was I just grabbed some mulch and I just barely covered. There it is. There's where I planted. And there's the mulch, the wood chips I put down. Just barely covered it. The seeds will have no problem coming up through there, but what it'll do is, it is supposed to rain in just a little bit actually, and that rain will water the seeds, and then the mulch or the wood chips will keep the seeds moist, so I won't have to water again really unless we literally have no rain. So here's some bean plants coming up through the mulch. I planted these a couple of weeks ago. So this area was, the tarp was ripped off, and then we put down some chicken manure, and then we put down some mulch. And so the mulch is really deep. As you can see, this is where I planted my beans and my corn. And so I had to really dig down. I just show you, I don't need to plant anything, but somebody's asking me how you plant in a Back to Eden garden, things where you have lots of mulch. So let me just show you. First, I just move the mass of mulch out of my way. So you see, this is really, really deep. Now, can you zoom in there? So now I have, this is just, I mean, that's not even good dirt, but it's clay. But I'll just lay the seed on top of that, and then I'll maybe put a little bit of, compost, chicken compost or whatever, and then if you cover it with all that wood chips back on top, the seed's obviously not going to come through. But if you leave it completely uncovered, then it's going to get really dried out, the dirt is. And so what I'll do is I'll just put just a little bit, nothing big, and so that will keep the seed moist, but it's not very much. You can see it's not very much at all, and so the seed can still come through. Now, most of the garden is not like this. This obviously, like I just said, this is the part that just had tarp on it, so it's just clay underneath. Next year, this will not be clay. Let's pretend like I'm actually digging into where we have a lot of broken down mulch. So what I'll do is, it's just as simple though. Make sure you can see down in the hole. It's just as simple. I'll dig down, and then I go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until I have my hole. Can you see my hole? Until I have my hole, I'll drop my seed, I'll push the dirt back on top of my seed, and then again, just a little bit of wood chips on top. Now, if the reason I pushed back, can you zoom out a little bit? Zoom out a little bit. Now, the reason I pushed back most, can you see all this? Mm-hmm. Most of my wood chips is so they wouldn't fall in the hole. But, if I have some wood chips fall in the hole, it really is not the end of the world. I'm not tilling the wood chips in. That's the most important part. So that's it. This is what I do. Of course, you can do it differently, but people were asking. So I just plant my seed, cover it with whatever soil is there. If there truly is no soil, if it's just packed clay like this, then a lot of times I'll put some composted chicken manure on top. Sometimes I won't, though, and it does fine. It might not do, it always does better each year. So anyway, and then I cover it with just a little bit of wood chips or mulch, whatever you want to call this stuff. And then I'll water it once maybe, and then that's it. And then I just wait for it to come up. So that's it. So that's how I planted the beans and the corn. You can see that they're just in a divot, and so I planted them, I planted them this way really because the mulch was so deep, but then I realized it's probably best because my corn typically falls because the soil is so, I guess, porous, that my corn will fall when we have really strong rain around hurricane season, right around harvest time. But I thought now, since they're planted kind of in a divot, that I can, as they grow, I can push the mulch up around them. I normally don't do that. I normally just try to do whatever's the least amount of work, truthfully, but I'm going to try that with my corn, and maybe it'll help it have more roots, and it'll do better this year. So sticking your trowel in, making a little hole, and dropping a seed, covering it with just a little bit of mulch is really an easy thing, an easy way to plant. My girls actually planted, these are sunflowers and cucumbers, and my girls planted these. So, I mean, it's not like there's a really difficult technique. It's really simple. And we planted sunflowers and cucumbers all along the edge of the garden, hoping to make some sort of wall or fence, just natural, and then we'll put up the electric fence as well because the animals just love our garden. Okay, and the way that I plant tiny, tiny, tiny seeds, just because I'm a little OCD and I want them spaced well, I don't feel like adding more work by thinning them later, and in order to save money and seeds, I'll make seed mats just out of toilet paper. I don't have any seed mats right now, but just for the purpose of this video. So there would be seeds pasted onto here, and then you plant them, and then the rain comes and this disintegrates and the seeds are left, and then they're spaced perfectly. And I'll show you that in a little bit, how I've done that with carrots. But so anyway, I put this down, and you see right here I've raked back the mulch, and the little pieces of mulch are now on the top and the big pieces are on the bottom. So what I'll do, if these were carrots, you don't want a lot because then they won't come through. But I will cover and make sure the big pieces aren't on it. But I'll cover it, I'll sprinkle mulch until I don't see any toilet paper, until I don't see any more white. And I try to make it pretty thin, but I also try, at the same time, I try to make sure that it is covered. That's about all. And so then once that's covered, I'll pat that down, and then a lot of times I'll take some of just the lighter pine straw, maybe just do a little other lighter color, but anything that doesn't have the toilet paper can be covered, deeply. But then this, so it's covered enough that, again, it keeps the moisture in, because carrots are really finicky. If you don't water them a lot and evenly, then they won't come up. But this allows for my life and your life, and it makes sure that if you don't get out to watering them every single day, they'll come up anyway. They'll be fine. But it's thin enough, look, just barely moving this, and there you can see. It's thin enough that even tiny little carrot carrot sprouts can come up. And this is what they look like. They're just starting to come up. These I planted, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks maybe a month. I don't know, it takes carrots a long time. But you see how evenly spaced they are, how they already have wood chips around them. There's no need to put wood chips around them, no extra work that you have to do after you plant them. That's what I love. But they're evenly spaced, and they're coming up really nicely, have really good germination rates, and that's all you do. So that is how I plant in the Back to Eden garden. I plant potatoes, I plant with a trowel, The big seeds I plant where you just rake it back, and see, here's some sweet potato slips growing. These I plant with a trowel. I'll plant just how I showed you earlier with the trowel. That's exactly how I'll plant these sweet potato slips, is I will jab a trowel in, pull it back, put a sweet potato slip in, cover it, water it for the first week, and then just leave it and let them go crazy. And that's how my sweet potato harvest. You can see, I hope you can see, you really look down in there, you can see those are roots. And once these get to be about 6 inches tall, you just take them off the sweet potato. What's down here is just a sweet potato. Let's see if I can show you. Well, you can't really see it because it's purple. But that my finger is touching, that is a sweet potato. So all I did was I put the sweet potato in here, covered it with mulch, let the slips grow, and then I'll rip the slips off, and from each individual slip, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These things are expensive when you buy them. You can grow your own, and that'll grow a whole harvest of sweet potatoes. I have another sweet potato here, one right here that'll grow some slips. I hope this video was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Have a great day!